Brian Kelly, under contract with Notre Dame, is no longer the Notre Dame head coach, and instead he's gone to greener pastures, and that's greener by financial dollars,
Purpler pastures.
and probably a lot easier recruiting wise for him. Heads over to LSU for $100 million over 10 years. That includes a $1.2 million loan from the school so he can buy a home.
Yeah, I mean
Now,
it's rough these times. I mean, there's a big real estate bubble, so it's tough. You need that extra million and a half over your $1.2 million over your $100 million coming to you over the next 10 years.
right. And what about the 2.7 million he made at Notre Dame this past season? That I found out was only $2.7 million because they allow him to keep 100% of any endorsement that he does that's approved by the school. So most, in a lot of cases, not all cases, because every coaching contract's unique, but normally the school gets a percentage of whatever endorsements you get because you're representing the school also because you're their coach. In the case of Brian Kelly, he gets 100% of all any endorsement he does. He gets 100% of that.
How much sort of endorsement? I wonder if it's local. So I don't see a lot of national.
Yeah, it's not like Saban. Saban's got like the Aflac thing.
Yeah. Oh God. So, enough with Saban and the Aflac shit. I've seen way too many of those.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know how much he's making from that. But what I have been trying to figure out is even without that, at making $2.7 million a year, I mean, you got like a coke habit or something, buddy, or a gambling problem that you need to take a loan from the school to buy a house?
Yeah, that's odd. Oh, it's an interest-free loan, so it's I don't fully understand that whole transaction.
Yeah, but still.
I think he heard that, some other coach got that deal, probably Nick Saban, so he wanted the same one. It's like, oh, write that into mine as well.
Yeah. I can't say I'm surprised.
Okay, that was my first question. I had no idea. I feel like the whole world has been blindsided by this.
No. I'm blindsided. I was surprised to hear like
at the moment
and the timing of it, and essentially maybe he timed it so he didn't end up in the playoffs because like a lame duck coach, they tend not to favor well in even if certain teams were to lose ahead of Notre Dame this week, they may not get moved up in the playoff because of that situation.
That's going to be a hilarious scenario. We'll talk about the funniest scenarios that could happen in the playoff, but
if you think about it, I think he probably came to the realization he was never going to win a national championship at Notre Dame due to their restrictive recruiting policies with a lot of grade A talent gets turned off, I should say, more like by Notre Dame because of their very restrictive grading requirements on GPAs and stuff like that. And he's going to a school where that is not the situation. So I believe
it's strange though, because is that different?
I think they ask you to spell LSU to get in to the football program. So,
but is that any different than it was 12 years ago when he took the job? Like, what? It's like I don't understand.
No, but I don't think he realized how difficult it was going to be.
I mean, that's just unbelievably naive on his part. And
maybe. And
it worked for him for 12 years.
But I think he knows. I think he's really like, it's like he knows he can get enough talent at LSU with the same coaching staff and show up and beat Alabama because they'll have the horses there to do it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess it's clear that the money was the deciding factor, and that's also why the horrific timing of it. Really what this comes down to is National Signing Day. The early signing day is December 15th. So LSU demanded that he come right away so he could get to work on that because he'd miss half his recruiting class for next year. So that's why I think there's a few things that I think happened. We saw what's his fuck from Oklahoma sign with suddenly go to USC, where
Yeah.
it sounded like LSU thought they were in the running. And so all of a sudden they were caught with their pants down and just backed up the truck for the next best guy that, well, maybe not even the next best guy, but the next guy that would accept their $100 million. And that was Brian Kelly. So, we like you said, you're probably not surprised because he's done this before. In fact, he's done this to my alma mater 15 years ago. Central Michigan University. He left in the middle of the night in a very similar situation to go to Cincinnati. That isn't nearly as crazy to understand because I know that Central Michigan is a stepping stone school. He moved to Cincinnati, who had a shot at some real bowl games where Central Michigan never did, no matter what. And he did a tremendous job for my Chippewas, winning a shit ton of games and going to 2 bowl games. So I can't complain there, but it's just shocking that the perception now is that Notre Dame is an intermediary step to get to a real job. So suddenly Notre Dame looks like a stepping stone school, which I don't think anyone's ever thought of them that way. So I think that's what a lot of the vitriol towards Brian Kelly is. It's really shattered the perception of Notre Dame now, which is may or may not be the correct way to look at it, but it seems like the reality at the moment.
I don't perceive it that way, but okay. I mean, I don't.
Well, you see why I'm saying that, though. He thinks that LSU is a better job. So, I mean,
no, he thinks that he thinks that LSU is at least a job that's going to pay him more money,
and like you said, easier to get to a national championship.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe any school outside of Notre Dame, pretty much except for Northwestern, is probably easier school to get to a national championship. That is in there. That is in the hunt every year.
I guess I would define that as by definition a stepping stone. Then you work.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if a stepping stone school gets to the national championship, gets into the playoff over and over again, then yeah, I think of a stepping stone school more as one that is a school where you get you get the team to overperform, and they're not in the national spotlight as much.
I guess
Notre Dame is a national spotlight school, so
I get that. I guess it's just I'm probably being too harsh on this, but I'm making a joke a little more serious than it is, but it's just kind of jarring, I guess, for the national landscape, because you never thought of Notre Dame that way at all, and they have been in the hunt throughout their history for national championships. You've only made the playoffs one time, though, haven't you?
No, we've made the college playoff at least twice.
Oh, I thought it was once.
No, at least twice, if not 3 times, and it's lost every time.
Well, yeah, I mean, Michigan State's made it once and got destroyed by Alabama, so I understand that side of it. But, well, I think that might as well lead into our discussion of the playoff, unless you had more angst you want to shed.
No, I'm reading the details of the contract, and when I saw this interest-free loan thing, I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, what is this guy doing? Like, why does he need an interest-free loan? To your point, it probably is. It's probably he got wind, whoever manages him or whatever, was like, Saban got an interest-free loan to buy a mansion in Alabama. You should ask for it too.
How many $1 million homes are in Alabama and Louisiana anyway?
Well, that's the other thing. I think the 1.2 million is going to cover.
That was underhanded on my part. I'm sorry.
Cover it all.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to Brian Kelly. You have a bunch of money and cemented your reputation as someone never to be trusted.
Yes, exactly.
I'm wondering what LSU thinks about how long he's going to stay there, if he's really going to be there the full 10 years, or if he finds some other place to go. Probably to the pros at some point, if they pay him some more money.
I mean, you wonder if, you wonder if if it doesn't go well and after like year 5, who will be looking to get out? Will it not just be Brian Kelly? Will the school be like, shit, we fucked up on this thing?
We can only hope.
And I guess the next question will be who is Notre Dame going to get? But we don't have to get into that today.
I think we should get into that a little bit. I mean, the immediate speculation was one of my funniest scenarios for the playoffs. Actually, is Luke Fickell from Cincinnati himself, that he would be an early candidate. I've heard Urban Meyer might be a candidate.
I've heard that was one of the immediate ones.
He has said in the past that he thinks of 3 places that he would want to coach would be Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame. And he crossed one of those off his list. Unfortunately, he is gainfully employed right now by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I wonder how much he's regretting that decision.
Well, and the Jaguars aren't extremely happy with his off the field incident.
Yes, so. I'm sure. Although that would be more digestible by an NFL team than Notre Dame could handle that right now.
That is true. That is true.
I don't know. Back to the Luke Fickell thing. I mean, how ridiculous would that be if Notre Dame does make the playoffs somehow, which is a scenario that could happen this weekend, and they end up in the playoff without a coach, but then they poach the coach of a team that is in the playoffs in Cincinnati with Luke Fickell. And that
maybe they play Cincinnati in the playoff and Fickell walks across at halftime.
The dramatic walk across the field.
Yeah. Like those weird scenarios we did on the other podcast where players got traded in a double header.
Yeah.
And just went to the other dugout. Yeah. Yeah. And this is unprecedented. Fickell is crossing. He's ripped off his shirt and is wearing a Notre Dame shirt under a Cincinnati shirt.
Oh, that would be incredible. That's all.
That would be now that's entertainment right there.
It would. I mean, that would be the scenario where Notre Dame couldn't beat them, so just take their coach. I mean, that's perfect.
We're just gonna take you
in dramatic fashion at halftime. I like.
Oh, that. You know what's going on here in Chicago? They're saying, "Why don't you take Matt Nagy away from the Chicago Bears?"
That's the third candidate I've heard, which is hilarious. Yeah, it's a bunch of wishful thinking from Bears fans that they could get Matt Nagy off their hands, and maybe Notre Dame would just take him. Somehow I don't think Matt Nagy is going to be employed very much longer by the Bears or anyone else. But we'll get into that later on. So we might as well talk about the college football rankings that came out on Tuesday night.
It kind of went
on a Wednesday.
Went kind of like we thought.
It went pretty much like we thought, but I think there's still some serious injustice and some serious bias towards Alabama, which just drives me fucking crazy.
Yeah, the fact that they remain number 3.
Yeah, despite looking as pathetic as I've seen any top 10 team this year.
Oh my God, they did not. Auburn blitzed and they could not handle it.
Yeah, 6-6 Auburn held Alabama scoreless through 51 minutes, I think it was, and held them only 3 points through 59 minutes and 30 some seconds. As Alabama's finally able to tie up the game and send it to 4 overtimes to finally prevail. That coupled with, they've already lost a game this year. I just don't understand why they keep getting so much love. I would put them as the least, the lowest ranked of our 1-loss teams. Well, let's back up. We can go to just to list the committee's top 6. Of course, Georgia, Michigan moved up to number 2 from out of nowhere.
I do not understand that one either.
I understand. Maybe I
understand. No.
I knew it was going to happen. Actually,
that makes no sense to me though.
Well,
how they go from 5 to 2 just because they beat 2? They're saying they're the 5th best team in the country. Then they beat Ohio State at home, not on the road, so at home, and that deserves just like you just swap them out, and then Ohio State just like falls to 10 or whatever or 7.
Yeah. I guess I'm not surprised by that. I can see why you'd bristle at that. I think the only team that I would move ahead of them right now is Cincinnati. And that's what we've
Yeah,
done. That's what we've done all year in our Limp Six.
right, exactly.
We've made Georgia number 1, Cincinnati number 2 because they're both undefeated, and Cincinnati, of course, has the best road win of any team in the top 6, beating Notre Dame. So I think that's where I'd put Michigan at number 3. But it sounds like
Yeah.
would you put them that high?
Oh yeah, I put him at number 3.
Okay.
I just don't agree with like, okay, you beat Ohio State, so now you swap spots. But I mean, it just doesn't make. If you look, they lost to Michigan State.
I did look at that.
No,
it was
right.
fun.
No, I know. Yeah, they lost to Michigan State. If you look at that, and then you go in and you beat Ohio State, who you obviously you hadn't beaten under Harbaugh and or something like 10 years even too, but still, like I just don't see how that's an automatic swap, and how Cincinnati continues, because they're kind of crashing the party right now because they haven't lost in the way they're looking at it and counting their TV dollars.
That's part of it, but the committee has always shown they're reluctant to give credit to any group of 5 schools.
Yes,
so
that's
so they'll always give the benefit of the doubt to the Big Ten or the SEC and that. At number, so
so we're in agreement so far.
Yeah, I'd put Michigan at number 3. So at number 4 is where it gets tricky, where I've already put Alabama at number 6. So 4 and 5 is where we've got Oklahoma State and Notre Dame. And I guess Oklahoma State was impressive. That game was fucking fun to watch. Bedlam versus Oklahoma after they lost or just before they lost their coach the next morning. I would say that's a better win than Notre Dame has had this year. I mean, Notre Dame's best win is Wisconsin, who's not in the top 25 anymore. But I still would put Notre Dame ahead of Alabama at least. So I'd keep Notre Dame at number 5. Do you agree with Oklahoma State moving ahead of Notre Dame? I mean, that puts them number 4, which puts them in the playoff.
I don't totally have a problem with it. I don't think their win over Oklahoma is that impressive, because Oklahoma hasn't been that impressive this year, and they barely beat them.
Yeah, I mean, the committee thinks they are. That's why. Well,
they're up there. Let's be honest. The committee is fucking bullshit. Okay, well, they're big stack of bullshit, and they're sitting there and they're literally looking at what is going to generate the most money for college football, which is fine, great, but that is why Alabama holds the 3 spot right now.
Well, fuck them. We made them number 6.
Because when Georgia beats them this weekend, this allows them to then they don't have to fall out of the top 10 or anything like that.
Well, hopefully they'll fall out of the top 4 at least, because I do not think they deserve to be a playoff team at all. But let's get back to 4 and 5 for us. Are you making the argument that Notre Dame should be ahead of Oklahoma State?
No, I'm not saying that's necessary. It's not something I would, to quote you often during these conversations, I'm not going to die on a sword for that argument, because I would say overall, I think Oklahoma State's schedule, when I went back and looked at it, they definitely have had more quality wins, probably over. Well, I guess if you look at teams ranked at the time, I didn't go back and look at where they are now, because it just shows you what they're ranked when you played them.
Well, they beat Baylor. I mean, they beat Baylor and they beat Oklahoma, so that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good. That's more than Notre Dame can say. So,
so then we've got it. So we're pretty much agree. So we'd move Alabama to 6 to get them out of the picture.
Which they'll be out of the picture anyway. So
well, and that's where it comes down to. All these rankings, again, all year long, all these rankings have just been for clickbait and for television dollars, just for pure entertainment, because none of these matter until next week. The selection show happens next Sunday, where we've got conference championship games is all we have left. Notre Dame does not have a game to move up. Ohio State doesn't have a game. They have not made the Big Ten championship game for the first time in like 6 years. So we've got a scenario where Notre Dame has a chance to get into this playoff, but they need some help. And I think the first place they really need it is from Cincinnati. They need Cincinnati to lose to Houston, which I think is possible. In the is it the American Conference, American Athletic? I don't even know what
Yeah,
fucking conference. It used to be
something like
Conference
that.
USA.
Yeah.
I think Houston could beat them, but of course I thought SMU was going to beat them a couple weeks ago, and that didn't happen. So I think that's the best case. That's the easiest one of the chaos scenarios that could help Notre Dame in. I think we definitely need Georgia just to beat the shit out of Alabama, just to get them out of the picture. If Alabama plays close and loses even, that's going to give like you said, the committee to give them an excuse to put Alabama in the playoff somehow. And I'm sick of it. I don't think Georgia has a shot, or I don't think Alabama has a shot. So if that's the blowout that I think it is, Alabama's out of the picture. So that helps Notre Dame. But I'm wondering if Oklahoma State wins, they've got to be in the playoff. If they win the Big 12 championship. Michigan wins their championship, I think they're in. So I think that's the scenario that's where I think the most plausible way Notre Dame gets in is if Cincinnati loses. I don't know. Have you?
Yeah, they need a lot of help, because you've got to give it as long as Oklahoma State wins, you've got to put them in over Notre Dame. Well, the question is, if Oklahoma State wins, what does that do to Cincinnati too? Like, you wonder.
That would have to bump Cincinnati below them. I mean, the resume is so much more impressive at that point for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, that's what and that was why I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to argue Oklahoma State jumping ahead of Notre Dame by any stretch. So, I mean, what really needs to happen for Notre Dame is Iowa needs to play their greatest football game of the year, and you never know. And like you said, Cincinnati needs to lose, and then it pretty much turns into a no-brainer for the committee at that point.
Well, then we've got close to anarchy. If Michigan loses and all those other scenarios play out, it's hard to say who would even be. If Oklahoma State loses, Notre Dame is in. In any chaos scenario, Notre Dame goes in because they're not even playing this week, so things just fall out of their way.
Yeah, don't you kind of think if Michigan loses, even over if Michigan lost and Alabama lost, don't you think it's Oklahoma State and Notre Dame both move in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but the thing about Notre Dame is they have to have two losses. I feel they have to have two losses in there to really get it.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Outside of the Alabama loss,
That's where I want Alabama to get crushed.
That's why they need either Cincy or Michigan to lose, just like you had said. I mean, I'm in agreement with you that is what's going to have to happen. The beauty of it, as I was feverishly texting you the other night, is the playoff committee, they're not about, we know they're not idiots. They're not idiots in the way that they're going to manage what's going to be great for college football. And even if Notre Dame doesn't get into the playoff, they have now set up scenarios where you can see a matchup still of, like we talked about already, Notre Dame and Michigan State could be a possible bowl game.
Oh, outside
that's a huge draw,
Bowl.
Right? That's a huge TV draw.
That would be the Limp Dickens Bowl right there.
Yeah, that's a classic matchup we don't see on a regular basis like we used to, which used to be a lot more fun for us.
Thanks a lot.
You also got another scenario of where you get Alabama Notre Dame too. So they have set this up in such a way that college football, even without Alabama in the playoff, still gets its due and gets its payday. You know what I'm saying? So, and I did go back and look at. I understand now why the Big Ten is weighted so heavily and gets so much respect.
The RPI stuff you were quoting before?
No, not the RPI stuff. I went back and looked at the TV shares for every week in college football.
Yeah.
And Big Ten, boy, do they hold a lot of the top 10 share. They hold some crazy matchups like Nebraska, Ohio State had like an 8.9, like the best share of the week. It's like, who fucking cares? But like, so they bring
Lots of
in
TVs.
they bring in a lot of TV revenue. And you also do have like, you have weeks where like Alabama, the Alabama matchups number one or Georgia matchups number one, but then so you had weeks where Notre Dame also was like the most viewed college football games. But so it made even more sense to me now why you saw this, like, wow, we have all these Big Ten teams in the top 25, right? And it's you know, it's I'll continue to say until we get back to something that has less human involvement, that will always have a play in how these decisions are made.
Well, we should definitely go back to your by next week after the selection show has committed their atrocities. You should bring up that RPI ranking or that site you were
The
referencing
final
before.
RPI
And
ranking,
and what they would say the top 4 or top 6 teams would be. That'd be fun to watch. Fun to
yeah.
check out how it compares.
I'll check the RPI site as well as the what the computer would have done on the
Oh
final
yeah, the
ranking
BCS.
too. Yeah.
Word Hole Media.